Hi, in this video, I will introduce the idea of triggering in Simio. Triggering is a very simple idea, and it's applied everywhere. The basic idea is I want the simulations to start an action based on the completion or the beginning of another action. So for example, when my model entity enters this particular server, I want the simulation to now do this other process. That's a pretty common example of a triggering event. And so in Simio, I'll show you how this is done. There are very many ways to do this. I'll show you one way to kind of hopefully to show you a straightforward way to see the concept and also a very easy way to implement it in Simio. So here we go. So I'm going to use this Simio model to, we're going to build a Simio model to kind of demonstrate how triggering works here. So I'm going to put two sources. In each source is going to generate a different model type. Okay, so I'm going to, let's start by creating two sources. Source one, source two. And then I'll just, just so that it's very clear, I'll create two model entities. So drag the first one. I'll call this one type A. And I'll create another model entity. Call this one type. I'm going to change the color just so that we don't get confused. I'll change type B to red. And let's put down one server. Put a server here. And what I'm going to, and again, this simulation model is just for, just to demonstrate the concept and just to kind of, understand how to implement these triggering mechanisms. So it's not going to actually represent any real system here. It can, I guess you can elaborate, but for now, just kind of, this is just a complete fictional system. Okay. Let's put down two sinks. Two sinks here. Okay. And then I'm going to connect everything now. So I'm going to go down to path. So click, so I have to keep going back and clicking again. I'm going to make a path from the output of source one to the input of server one, and then the output node of server one to the input of sink one. And I'll connect source two to sink two. Okay, press escape to get out of that selection. Okay, so let me just start with just making sure everything's connected here. So source one is going to create type A, source two is going to create, I'm going to change this to type B. So when I press run here, you'll see the green ones go on top and red ones go on the bottom, which is all fine. Okay, so we know it's running at least. Okay, so now let's actually kind of see, figure out what we want to do here. Okay. Let's just make this fictional case where every time I see 5 of these type A's arriving to the system, I'm going to create one of these red ones. Okay, so I'm going to trigger the creation of this red type B model entity for every 5th type A entity that gets created. Okay, so every time I see 5 of those green ones appear, I should see one red one appear. Okay, just to kind of reinforce again how triggering works here. So type A, let's change the source here. I'm going to change the intro arrival time here. Let's do random exponential and then change the mean to 5 minutes. Okay, it tells you, so random exponential is a post on arrival, mean of 5 minutes. So the lambda is 1/5 per minute. So one entity, entities per arrival is just 1. Okay, so it's going to create one of these model entities. It's going to come in here and it's going to go straight to server 1. And once I'm on server 1, really doesn't matter what the time is. I just leave it as default. But really the important thing here is once the model entity comes in here, I want to have some kind of a variable that increments so that I can keep track. So when the 5th green one appears, I have one of these red ones appear. Okay, so let's set that up. Let's set up the logic first. Okay, so when we go to server 1, I'm going to go to add-on processes, and I'm going to go to let's do after processing. So after processing means after the model entity's gone through its processing time, it leaves the processing queue. This add-on process is run. This is where I'm going to set up a logic And I'm gonna set it up so that I need some kind of a, so before I continue, I actually need some state variables, okay, some kind of a counter variable, okay. So I'm gonna go to definitions, and I'm gonna go to states, and I'm gonna create two integer variables. Now, you might not understand these state variables as clearly. You can refer to the another video that I posted regarding state variables, and to get a better understanding. Okay. I'm going to create two state variables for this model. I'm going to call the first one counter 1, and the next one counter 2. And the idea is that every time a type A gets generated and comes into server 1 and it's finished processing, counter 1 gets incremented by 1. And when you hit 5, then model B will get generated. Okay. So I'm going to go back to my add-on process here. So I'm going to use those state variables that I just created. Okay. The first step would be assign, right? I'm going to increment the counter 1 variable by 1. Okay. So the new state variable here, below is easier to see. It's called counter 1. I'm going to increment that by 1. So whatever the previous value was, counter 1, add 1 to it. Okay. Let me rename this so that it's easier for us to understand. So call this, let's say, increment count. Okay. So it's going to increment counter 1. Okay. And then the next step is I have to decide, check, right? I need to check, is counter 1, does it equal to 5? Okay, because if it equals to 5, then I know I want to create one of those red type V model entities. If not, don't do anything, right? So I'm going to check under here, condition type is condition based. I'm going to check the variable counter 1, does it equal to 5? If it's false, it's just going to go down this branch. If it's true, it'll go to the right, true branch. Okay, so I'm going to rename this as well. I'll call this counter 1 equals 5 with a question mark. Okay. So if it's false, then we don't have to, nothing happen. Nothing occurs, right? But if it equals to 5, this is where I want to create, I want to do the triggering, right? Triggering the creation of a model entity. So there are a couple ways to do this. I'm going to do one peculiar way to do it because I want to show you a couple concepts at the same time. Okay. I'm going to go into definitions. I'm going to create what's called an event. Okay. So event is what exactly it sounds like. It's an event. It's an event that I can create any kind of event. Okay. So I'm going to click there and create an event. Okay. Just leave it as event 1. So this is an event. So this is a triggering event, basically, that I'm going to use. Okay. So how this is useful is when I go to process now, I have a step called fire. Okay. I'm going to put that fire down there, and there's an event name. And I just created an event called event 1. Okay. So I'm going to create this actually, what this is doing is it's creating. Okay. I'll explain how this happens. So right now, technically, it's not doing that, right? All this is doing is like, okay, if it counter 1 equals to 5, then I want you to trigger or fire an event called event 1. Okay. So how do I use this event 1? I'm going to go back to the facility view, go to source 2, and right now the arrival mode is into arrival time, so it works the same way as source 1. I'm going to change this now so that the arrival mode is not based on arrival time, but based on an event. Okay, so I'm going to change this based on event. So rather than like some kind of interval, this source only creates the model entity type B based on an event. Okay, so the triggering event name, so we probably already guessed it now. Go down here. I'm gonna go to, should be under E. Pass by it. Let me search it here. Event 1. Okay, so when event 1 event is triggered, this is then going to create a type B model entity. Okay, so that's how I'm using the trigger. So just a little pause here. You can technically make these things run on some other triggering event. for example, I can trigger it based on if a model entity enters this node, you can call that as a triggering event to cause an action here. Okay, but I explicitly create an event called event one because it's easy for me to deal with. Okay, it kind of is also a lot easier to see. But there are many ways to kind of reference the triggering event. It's really your really design preference. Sometimes I find that it's a lot easier to just cleanly, explicitly write out these events and trigger and fire these events using those that you explicitly create, rather than saying input at some object or output at some object, etc. Something that is unavoidable, you have to use those, but in this case, we can cleanly just reference an event called event one, which then is all intricately tied up so that when, based on this add-on process, when the counter one variable equals to 5, it'll fire an event called event one, which then is linked with this source too. So on event one, a type B model entity is generated. Okay. I also then want to add a state assignment here. And again, it's kind of showing you a few other things that I mentioned in other videos as well. State assignments. State assignments are variables, right? So I'm going to change the variable here. I'm going to change the counter to variable. So this keeps a track of the number of red type B variables, type B model entities that have been generated. So counter 2, 2 plus 1. So every time a red type B model entity leaves source 2, the value increments by 1. Okay. And yeah, we'll just keep it at that. Okay. So the way it's set up right now is we should see 5 of these green ones appear here. Then once when the 5th one leaves server 1 as it's not processing, we should see 1 of these red ones come up. Okay. Just to, you can run this and kind of see it. Okay, we can make this go a little faster. Change it to 50. A lot faster. Okay. Looks like it's not working though, right? So what's happening here? Okay. Let's actually check to make sure. There's multiple ways to also check as well, but I'm going to do something that's, I think, a good way to kind of debug and kind of figure out what's going on in your system. So you can use the status label to your advantage here. So I'm going to create 2 status labels over here. Oops, sorry, and then I'll create another status label over here. The first one, this is going to show the value of counter 1. And the second one will show the value of counter 2. Okay. Oh, one other thing I think I didn't actually. So once I fire, okay, what I also want to do is make sure that the variable counter 1 resets to 0, so we can kind of restart the process. Okay, so I'm going to put an assign here. Okay, and I'm going to change this to 1. And change this value. You could use it as 0 or 0.0. It's fine. So I'm going to rename this as reset counter 1 to 0. Okay. I'm going to also do one more thing here. Simulation, obviously, I mean, based on what's featured, it can move really fast. Just for, I'm going to put a small delay here. So what this is doing is artificial. I'm going to create a small delay. So once you trigger this type B creation, a creation of type 1 entity, I'm going to put a small delay so that, because usually, there might be model entities that are waiting at server 1 that are kind of built up. It might be happening very quickly. I don't want any kind of overriding of variables happening. So I'm going to put a small delay here, just very small delay that's really won't affect the overall performance or anything like that. So not 1 hour, maybe just 1 minute. Okay, just to be safe. Okay, so let's see if this is working properly. Okay, so if I run this, I should see this value go up to 5, and then I should see this red one pop up, and this value should go up by 1. Okay. Another thing I want to do here is it might be moving a little fast. So I'm going to just change the distance here so that we can actually visually see these red model entities moving. Because right now it's going to zap through really quickly. It's going to be very hard to see. So I'm going to change this draw to scale from true to false. And I'm going to change the logical length to, let's say, 300. Okay, let's see that'll help us visualize. So I'm going to run. Just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There you saw it, right? Let's run it again. Let me slow it down a little bit. 3, if you agree 1, 3, 4, 5. Every fifth one, you see a mod type B mod gets created. So the fifth type A gray model entity triggers the creation of a single red type B model entity. Okay. So this is one way of triggering events. Okay, and some of the key objects I've used the event element, right? And I've used methods to kind of keep track as well, but the fire step in add-on process. Okay, so this is one way of using events and triggers in Simio. Okay. All right, so hopefully this is helpful for you. Make sure you look at my other videos if you have any questions on the other parts. Hopefully this will help you in whatever you're trying to build. See you next time.